Yo, what's up, you guys? Matthew here. In this video, what I wanted to do is give you guys a channel update. For those of you who subscribed over the past couple years, you guys probably subscribed to learn about cryptocurrency, how to trade on Solana, Ethereum, things like that. If you subscribed years ago, then you probably subscribed to learn about how to sell on Amazon, FBA, how to do e-commerce, right? So the channel has had quite a long history, and yet again, we are pivoting. And I've been thinking for a while kind of what to post on this channel, which is more or less a process of trying to find different niches that I found interesting. I did a little bit of dry runs on new accounts where I tried to post different types of content, like different formats, long form, short form, different ways of generating content, whether it be using my own voice or with AI and different types of visuals, stuff like that. And I wanted to kind of adapt that eventually to this channel. But first and foremost, I wanted to at least notify you guys who are subscribed that I'm going to be posting some different things, you know. Now, in the process of, I guess, deploying some of these different forms of content within different niches on the other channels, I more or less found that deciding what is worth talking about or what's interesting to me was kind of like the same thing as, asking myself what's important in the world, right? Or another way, I guess, less around myself would be like what other people would find interesting. But I didn't really want to do that. I kind of wanted to do something that, I found interesting and find people who kind of share that interest. And a lot of it's like philosophy or different niches of religion or different niches of spirituality or mysticism or kind of like ancient history stuff or even futurism, right? Or philosophy as it applies to anything like philosophy about AI or philosophy about consciousness, different things. And it's so broad that I figure the best format would probably just be to do it right here on this channel as myself instead of like silo off each of these interests into these different channels and try and make long form content about it all. And the fact about that is basically that in kind of delving into these interests, if I'm being honest with myself, a lot of them are interests that I find interesting because they are a preference for how I would rather the world be, like a preference for some sort of context that we all exist in, or like some sort of preference for a religion that, I think is a good way that the world could be. You know what I mean? So it's all kind of like assumptive stuff, and I'm not really a dogmatic person. Like I do compulsively behave as though things are true, in the sense that in doing so, I practically believe that these things are true, but I do reduce them to basically like compulsive behavior, and I think we all have that if we're to be honest with ourselves, that, our beliefs are kind of what I just said, a compulsive behavior, to believe, right? To behave as though something is true. So in that context, I was thinking like none of these niches, right, for things, really apply to me believing them so much that I find them like, I don't know how to put it, worth peddling or something, or being like a shill for this or a shill for that, for this idea or for this way of thinking, or, I recognize them for just preferences that I have. So they're not so important to like, say that I know the truth and this is therefore this channel is telling you guys the truth. And a lot of people are very dogmatic in that way. And, they have a channel that they use to peddle their dogma, basically. And I don't really have that. It's not something I'm really like interested in, but all my interests are about things that you can't really arrive at or speak about reasonably. They're kind of just like either fantastical in one sense or sensational in another way, or just not testable. Like, I'm into a lot of theoretical physics and stuff like that, or philosophically, even like metaphysics and things like that. And it's just not really something you can talk about in a grounded sense, even though I find those things most interesting, right? So it doesn't make sense for me to start a channel to talk about, theoretical physics if I will probably stop working on the channel if it's a channel where I'm like, oh no, this is how things are, because that's the only way I find that stuff meaningful. Otherwise, it's more just entertainment for the mind. It's kind of just like all these things are kind of like a different form of like mental masturbation, where you just think about something and you find it interesting and you find different ways to think about it, and you're like, oh, but what if that was true? You're like, oh, I would prefer that would be the case. That would be fun. It'd be like a fun context that we all exist in. Like, one niche that I was really kind of like dialed into for like years, and I still am actually. It's like, but more in a dogmatic sense for a while, is really into these near-death experiences, right? And I still watch them all the time. It's just kind of like with less of an emphasis on like, wow, this is like an insight into the way things are. It's like with anything, if you're kind of honest with yourself, I think you'll find that any statement or claim or, statement about the way things are, you'll find that there's like a lot more compelling arguments against it than there are compelling arguments for something. And that's kind of like the problematic scenario that we all find ourselves in within like every topic of interest that is of that nature, that is kind of like untestable and stuff like that, right? Which means that it's kind of like not something that's very relevant to trying to be helpful, I suppose, to people, right? So it's still interesting, though. And so that's kind of like the fine line that I look to walk in my journey of trying to share things that I find relevant, right? And I think a lot of people share that kind of like preference for interests and different ways of thinking about things. And so that's what I hope to share with you guys. I guess some form of philosophy about different topics of interest that may or may not be very grounded, right? So if you guys want to, I guess, stay tuned for the next one. I noticed that, like about 1,500 of you were subscribed to the notifications and actually get like a notification for this video. You're probably trying to like, learn about cryptocurrency or something. So, stick around and see what it's about. A lot of you guys probably did follow me for that reason, but if you were actually a viewer when I was going live, I would kind of sprinkle in a lot of my, own interests along the way. And so I imagine some of you guys share those interests and kind of found a lot of that stuff interesting. So we'll keep going. All right. See you in the next video.